Hello everybody, welcome back to Learn It. So we're at part 3 of lecture number 1, which deals about the Indus Valley Civilization. When we talk about this lecture, we'll be covering the important aspects and themes related to the IVC, and there are 12 important themes, out of which let's see how much we can cover today. Without any further ado, let's get started. So beginning with town planning. If we're talking about town planning, how can we not start with towns? So all the towns of the Harappan civilization, or rather let me put it that way, that all the towns of the IVC were divided into two sections, the upper town and the lower town, marking one great exception, that to be of Dholavira, which is in Gujarat. So Dholavira had three sections, the upper town and lower town as usual, but it also had a middle town. Now, this is why Dholavira might have been a later Harappan site. This is what our historians extrapolate, that only because it's also got a middle town, maybe it's a newer addition to the Indus Valley Civilization. Coming to the streets were oriented from east to west. All lower towns had streets. Streets were cutting each other at virtually right angles. So you see here? So this basically is your street. You can see certain right angles made here. There are certain cuts. These are virtual right angles. Maybe it'll be 89 point something, but these are virtually right angles, because of which the historians extrapolate that Harappans knew geometry. They knew about mathematics. Grid systems was used. The materials that were used to build these streets were burnt bricks. Mind it, measured in the ratio of 4:2:1. The streets were fortified, and all lower town had streets. There was no exception to this thing. Now again, listen to me very, very carefully. When we talk about streets were laid down first, and then iske upar houses were built. So now let's talk about houses. All street had houses. Two houses faced each other. So let's say this is house number 1. This is house number 2. They're supposed to face each other. And in between will run the parallels of the streets. Houses were single, double, multiple storied. And how do we conclude that houses were single storied, double storied, multiple storied? Because we have evidences of staircase. Staircases have been found. And why would there be staircases had there not been any stories? अगर सिर्फ एक ही लेयर की बिल्डिंग है, एक ही फ्लोर की बिल्डिंग है, तो हमें staircases क्यों चाहिए? Because we have got evidences of staircases, which is why we conclude that there might have been single-storied building, double-storied buildings, multiple-storied buildings. And houses were of different shapes and sizes. They were not painted. Painted नहीं थे. उस पर किसी ने पेंट नहीं किया था, जैसे आज के ज़माने में हम कर देते हैं. Our houses come in various colors, shapes and sizes, but Harappan houses were not painted. Now again, houses were constructed with burnt bricks. We know the ratio, 4:2:1. This is going to be uniform in every public building, private building that we see. Bricks ka ratio is always going to be 4:2:1. Now houses were not painted. Houses had many rooms. Harappan houses had many rooms. So today when we talk about 2 BHK, 3 BHK, 4 BHK, you'll be surprised to know Harappan houses had 12 rooms, 17 rooms, 18 rooms, 22 rooms, which is why we infer that Harappans might have had a joint family system. अब 22 room तुम बनवा के क्या ही करोगे? So that is why historians also extrapolate that because there were 22 rooms, that is why a joint family system might have prevailed. Or else why was there even a need of 22 rooms? So far, we haven't excavated any doors. But we've got remains and evidences of wooden doors. Windows have existed at the top. Mind it, we're talking about 25,000 BCA. But still the Harappans had windows at the very top for cross ventilation. And we forget about ventilation. हमारे ORN में तो हमें एक विंडो मिलना बहुत ही मुश्किल होता है. उस टाइम के हरप्पन हाउसेज में विंडोज थे. When we talk about houses, let's now move on to bathrooms. One thing is very clear, that since Harappans have 12, 22 rooms, 17 rooms, 18 rooms, and we're extrapolating that joint family system might have prevailed there, We can't just have 1 or 2 bathrooms, no? We have to have multiple bathrooms also, given the fact that we have so many rooms. We have to accommodate those many number of people in certain bathrooms also. So one thing is for sure that the bathrooms were very many in number. Bathrooms were detached from the main component of the house. अगर ये आपका house है तो bathrooms backyard में होंगे, आपके house से बहुत अलग. Now 2 bathrooms faced each other. Let's say this is bathroom number 1, similar to the category of the houses जो हमने houses में देखा था, और बीच से ड्रेन जाएगी. हर बाथरूम का अपना एक ड्रेन होगा और वो फिर जाके मेन ड्रेन में वापस से ड्रेन आउट होगी. और ये अगर स्ट्रीट का मेन ड्रेन है तो ये मेन ड्रेन जो है ये वापस जाके ड्रेन हो जाएगा इंडस रिवर में. ये था चैनल उनके ड्रेनेज सिस्टम का. And mind it, drainage system is also called to be the most impressive feature of the town planning. Harappan civilization का impressive feature was town planning. Town planning's most impressive feature was the drainage system. Then moving to citadel. Now citadel is nothing but a mini fort. It's found in the upper town only. Let's zoom into the picture. This happens to be our lower town. This is our lower town. Citadel is on a plinth. Plinth कुछ नहीं होता है, एक raised surface को plinth कहते हैं. तो जो citadel था वो एक plinth पे बना हुआ था, इसीलिए वो दूर से हमें दिख रहा है. And it was in the upper town. So this section is our upper town. ये अपना lower town हो गया. How many citadels were found so far? 6 citadels. Again, जो biggest citadel है वो हमें मोहनजोदारो में मिला है. There were 6 capital cities as we've already covered in the last lecture or so. There were 6 capital cities. Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Chanandaro, Banavali, Kalibangan and Lothal, which is why we've concluded that the Harappans had 6 capital cities. The biggest citadel was at Mohenjo-daro. And mind it, there were a group of historians who, जब हम किसी चीज़ को excavate करने जाते हैं, so obviously we have our own team. अब जब हम चानंदारो का जब historians excavate कर रहे थे citadel, so that got damaged, which is why अभी के लिए we have 5 very promising citadels and the one has gotten damaged for today. All the citadels faced the west direction. सारे citadels का ये uniformity है. Again, uniformity in public buildings. Now let's come to Great Bath. Okay, after the drainage system or even before the drainage system, you can say the drainage system as well as the Great Bath are 2 very promising features of the town planning. So let's look into the picture. Great Bath. It is a rectangular tank. You can call it to be a bath tank or a pool. It's 12 meters in length, 7 meters wide, and 2.4 meters deep. It's only found at Mohenjo-daro. And Mohenjo-daro की भी upper town में मिलता है हमें ये. मतलब जहाँ पे ये है, let's say ये हमारा upper town है, ये हमारा citadel है, ये हमारा upper town हो गया. Upper town में हमें Great Bath मिलेगा. And where is Great Bath found? Only at Mohenjo-daro. Nowhere else. Mind it, 6 capital cities हैं, लेकिन सिर्फ हमें मोहनजोदारो में ही मिलता है. It's constructed with burnt bricks, again in the ratio of 4:2:1. It's near the Citadel Mount. So Citadel Mount is somewhere here, and ये हमारा Great Bath हो गया. One corner of the bath, a drain outlet has been found. So where is the drain outlet? कहीं ना कहीं तो पानी ड्रेन होगा ना, कहीं ना कहीं से. So जैसे हम घरों में देखते थे कि ये हाउस 1 है, ये हाउस 2 है, यहाँ से स्ट्रीट जा रही है, फिर यहाँ पे बाथरूम 1 है, बाथरूम 2 है, और यहाँ से इनका ड्रेनेज सिस्टम जा रहा है. Similarly, the Great Bath is also the Great Bath has to have a drain outlet ना, नहीं तो पानी कहाँ से ड्रेन होगा. A very surprising thing that we found here is that inside the drain outlet a cotton cloth has been found. उससे हम क्या कंक्लूड करते हैं कि स्पिनिंग एंड वीविंग वाज नोन टू देम. वरना कॉटन बना कैसे? आप कॉटन का पेड़ तो उगा दोगे, बट उसे प्रोसेस तो करोगे ना कॉटन बनने के लिए, कॉटन क्लॉथ बनने के लिए. कॉटन हैज टू बी प्रोसेस्ड. सो दैट इज व्हाई वी कंक्लूड दैट स्पिनिंग एंड वीविंग वाज नोन टू देम एंड स्पिनिंग एंड वीविंग आल्सो बिकम्स एन ऑक्यूपेशन नाउ. मूविंग फॉरवर्ड, let's now look into let's look into granaries. So what is a granary? A granary is a place जहाँ पे हम हमारे ग्रीन स्टोर करते हैं. जैसे आज हम हमारे घरों में ग्रीन स्टोर करते हैं, Harappans also used to store their grains. Now these are very giant warehouses, आप इन्हें कह सकते हो. All sites of the Harappan civilization, all sites of the IVC have granaries. All granaries were in the upper town now. They were constructed with burnt bricks. Granaries were compartmentalized. अब जो ग्रैनरीज थी उनमें भी हमने डिफरेंट डिफरेंट सेक्शंस कर दिए थे कि इस सेक्शन में हम सिर्फ राबी क्रॉप्स रखेंगे, इस सेक्शन में हम सिर्फ खरीफ क्रॉप्स रखेंगे. एंड माइंड इट, हरप्पन्स न्यू how to produce both rabi and kharif crops. We'll look into the crops that they grew, but इन्हें पता सब थे. The biggest granary that we found is again at Mohenjo-daro. ग्रेट बात भी मोहनजोदारो में था, ग्रैनरीज भी मोहनजोदारो में. सबसे बड़ी वाली ग्रैनरी जो है वो मोहनजोदारो में है. विच इज़ वाई वी रिगार्ड द ग्रैनरी एट मोहनजोदारो टू बी द ग्रेट ग्रैनरी, क्योंकि ये इतनी बड़ी थी. ये 45 मीटर्स लॉन्ग थी, 15 मीटर्स वाइड थी. हरप्पा अलोन हैड 6 ग्रैनरीज. हाउ डिड वी नो दैट इज़ अ ग्रैनरी? अब आप में से कोई ये पूछ सकता है कि ये डाउट हो सकता है कि हमें कैसे पता कि वही ग्रैनरी है. तो जो राइस हस्क थे, जो राइस के जो रिमेन्स होते हैं जब हम उसका राइस निकाल लेते हैं, हमें उसके एविडेंसेस मिले. हिस्टोरियंस ने वो भी एक्सकवेट किए हैं. बार्ले के जो हस्क होते हैं हमें वो भी मिले बनावली से. शॉर्तुगाई से हमें वीट के हस्क मिले. शॉर्तुगाई कहाँ हो गया? अफगानिस्तान साइड हो गया. रंगपुर से हमें राइस के हस्क मिले थोड़े से. सो व्हाट कैन वी कंक्लूड फ्रॉम दिस वेरी सेक्शन? हम ये कंक्लूड कर सकते हैं कि हरप्पन्स को एग्रीकल्चर तो आता था. दे वर ऑल्सो वेरी सेल्फ सफिशिएंट. प्लस अगर किसी के पास ग्रैनरी है, सो वी कैन ऑल्सो कंक्लूड दैट सरप्लस इकोनॉमी एग्जिस्टेड. आप खुद को सेल्फ सफिशिएंट कर पा रहे हो तभी तो आप ग्रैनरी में अपने ग्रीन्स रखोगे ना. दिस मे ऑल्सो लीड अस टू कंक्लूड दैट हरप्पन्स वर फ्यूचरिस्टिक प्लानर्स. वो सिर्फ आज की नहीं सोचते थे, वो आगे की भी सोचते थे. एंड आर्ट ऑफ स्टोरेज वॉज वेरी वेल नोन टू दी हरप्पन पीपल. तभी तो यू आर एबल टू स्टोर इट इन अ ग्रैनरी. वॉट आर द इन्फ्रेंसेस दैट वी मेक फ्रॉम दिस वेरी सेक्शन? ग्रैनरीज, देयर माइट हैव बीन अ फॉर्म ऑफ टैक्स. हो सकता है कि ग्रैनरीज जो थे उस टाइम के लोग टैक्स पे करते थे इन द फॉर्म ऑफ ग्रेन्स. एंड पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम, PDS जिसको आज हम बोलते हैं, माइट हैव एग्जिस्टेड बैक देन ऑल्सो, हु नोज. Now let's move on to the other section, wells. So this very picture you see a well. ये well के remains हैं, ये excavate किया था हमने. See this is the drainage section. ये wells हैं, ये पूरा ये जो excavated site है ये well की है. Now when we talk about wells, public and private wells have been excavated so far. They were built with burnt bricks, again set in mortar. Set in mortar. Mortar is what? Gypsum kind का, gypsum type का एक material होता है. Wells were predominantly found in circular shape. और भी shapes थे, rectangular जैसे हमें इस picture में दिख रहा है. Wells were predominantly circular in shape. The biggest well that has been excavated so far is from Kalibangan. Evidences of public pools have also been found from the sites of Harappan civilization. Moving on to the next section, that is of economy. Okay, so one thing is for sure, that Harappans, the IVC people, did practice agriculture, which was followed by cattle rearing, which was followed by domestication of animals. Now the examiner can ask us a very fancy term. Did the Harappans knew about, let's say, animal husbandry? We'll get confused here. But animal husbandry, you'll have to understand, is nothing. This is nothing but domestication of animals. You're taking care of animals, you're getting their byproducts. This is animal husbandry. Rearing of animals, rearing of cattle, cattle rearing. How can we practice agriculture? One has to have water. For practicing agriculture, one has to have water. Water becomes a necessity ingredient. So irrigation, we've excavated so many evidences of canals at Shortugai. Why this becomes important is you'll have to understand one thing. We talk about 2,800 plus sites of the Indus Valley Civilization. All of them are situated and located on the banks of River Indus. They're distributaries, its tributaries and everything. But what about the sites that are here on deserted lands? For these lands, we will require an irrigation setup. And yes, you'll be surprised to know that we have found an evidence, the historians have found an evidence of irrigation being practiced at Shortugai, which is in present-day Afghanistan, and we have found an evidence of a canal there. Also, from the prior examples that we looked at, under the theme of town planning, we can also say that Harappans were self-sufficient. You remember the examples of granaries that we went through and everything. We also discussed about their taxation policies and everything. We don't know whether they had a taxation policy or not, but this is what historians again extrapolate. The taxes might have existed. Now, when we talk about economy, trade also comes into existence, and for trade, you'll have to understand one thing very carefully. So we'll have to look at the map. When the IVC existed, there were two contemporaries of IVC. One was the Mesopotamian civilization, which came to life because of two prominent rivers, Euphrates and Tigris. Just like how Indus Valley Civilization came to life because of river Indus, Mesopotamian civilization came into existence because of two rivers, namely Tigris and Euphrates. What about the third contemporary? These three were contemporaries, right? Indus, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. What about the Egyptian civilization? The Egyptian civilization was brought to life because of river Nile. So you'll have to understand one thing very, very carefully. Just like how Indus people wrote, the IVC people wrote, that is a deal of someday else that we are yet not able to decipher and all the story. That will deal in the script section about the script. But one thing is very prominent that the IVC people have written. We have literary resources, but we're unable to decipher them. Mesopotamian civilization being a contemporary of Indus Valley Civilization, Mesopotamia people also wrote. The best part about their literary resources is that we have been able to decipher what they've written. There's a literary resource which goes by the name Avesta. It's a literary resource of the Mesopotamian civilization. One very good thing is that we have deciphered the script. It's in Kharoshthi script, which is written from right to left, and we have deciphered the script. So everything that we're going to talk about trade, we have written evidences of the same in the same book, in the same literary resource. Whatever I'm saying has been written down in the book of Avesta. So what have they written? We'll have to understand very carefully. They've written that they had two contemporaries. Here we're talking about Mesopotamian civilization, and it's the POV of the Mesopotamia people. अब मेसोपोटामियंस लिख रहे हैं, तो मेसोपोटामियंस लिख रहे हैं कि हमारे दो कंटेम्प्रेरीज हैं. एक हैं जो लैंड ऑफ 5 रिवर्स के साइड में रहते हैं. सो 5 रिवर्स, ये मेसोपोटामियन पीपल लिख रहे हैं कि हमारे दो कंटेम्प्रेरीज हैं. एक हैं जो इजिप्शियन है और एक है जो लैंड ऑफ 5 रिवर्स के साइड में रहते हैं. जो लैंड ऑफ 5 रिवर्स के साइड में रहते हैं उनको हम मेलूहर्स कहते हैं. एंड दे आर डार्क स्किन पीपल, एंड ये सब कुछ लिखा हुआ है. दे आर डार्क स्किन पीपल एंड दे आर वेरी बिजी ट्रेडर्स. वो शिप से आते हैं, वो हमें सामान देते हैं और फिर वो वापस चले जाते हैं. What you'll be surprised to know that they've also written क्या क्या items हैं. We'll deal with it over here, but one very fascinating thing that they've written is that वो बड़ी बड़ी ships में आते हैं इंडस वाले लोग. Meluhans come in very huge ships and they come to our land, they trade with us and they go back. और one-way trip from Indus to Mesopotamia would take around 4.5 months. 5 महीने लग जाते थे इंडस से मेसोपोटामिया पहुंचने में. They have also written, the Mesopotamian people have also written कि Mesopotamian people क्या क्या एक्सपोर्ट करते थे. तो उनका जो एक्सपोर्ट था वो हमारा इम्पोर्ट बन जाएगा. Mesopotamian people used to export gold, precious stones, blue stone which goes by the name of lapis lazuli, silver, dates and figs, baked bricks. ये सब कुछ Mesopotamian civilization एक्सपोर्ट करते थे. हम क्या क्या इम्पोर्ट करते थे? They have also written. So what did we used to import? We used to import food crops. वो क्या क्या इम्पोर्ट करते थे? They used to import food crops, gold, timber, cotton cloth, salt. ये सब कुछ अवस्था में लिखा है, राइट? तो ये उनका POV है कि मेसोपोटामियन पीपल क्या क्या एक्सपोर्ट करते थे, मेसोपोटामियन पीपल क्या क्या इम्पोर्ट करते थे. नाउ जाहिर सी बात है, इजिप्शियन सिविलाइजेशन, मेसोपोटामियन सिविलाइजेशन एंड इंडस सिविलाइजेशन आर 3 कंटेम्प्रेरीज. वन वेरी बिग क्वेश्चन हियर इज Did we meet the Egyptian civilization people? The answer is no, in all caps. So what happened was that Egyptian people, the Egypt civilization people, the Egyptian people used to export dates and figs to Mesopotamian civilization people. Dates and figs. You remember they've written here कि हम एक्सपोर्ट करते थे, करेक्ट. यूल अंडरस्टैंड दिस कि उन्होंने एक्सपोर्ट में क्यों रखा हुआ है. वो इजिप्ट से डेट्स एंड फिग उनको जो मिलते थे, डेट्स एंड फिग्स, वही वो जाके वापस हमें एक्सपोर्ट कर देते थे. सो टेक्निकली हमारा डायरेक्ट ट्रेड नहीं चलता था इजिप्शियन पीपल से. जो इजिप्शियंस मेसोपोटामिया को देते थे वही मेसोपोटामिया हमें दे देता था. बट वन थिंग इज़ फॉर श्योर that the IVC people had a very flourishing trade. Obviously, when they're exporting so many things, when they're importing so many things, they have to have a very flourishing trade. What we can also conclude is that IVC people were very self-sufficient. Obviously, we've seen the examples of granary, we've seen the examples of warehouses. हमने देखे कि उनके पास rice husks और barley husks, cotton, सारी चीज़ें तो थी. तो they were very self-sufficient as well. जब हम टैक्सेस की बात कर रहे हैं तो ऑब्वियसली उनके पास सफिशिएंट चीज़ें होंगी तभी तो वो ग्रैनरीज में चीज़ें रखते थे. एंड येस, IVC people also had a very flourishing trade. Moving to the next section, and that is of society. Polity. So, when we talk about polity, this is the most important statement. Very, very important statement of this section. The administrative setup is not known to us. It's unknown to us, and which is why the historians mostly extrapolate in this section. No palaces have been excavated so far. Only 6 citadels have been excavated. The upper town might have been an administrative unit. See, we're using the term might. हमें खुद से नहीं पता है because the administrative setup is not known to us. That is why we're just extrapolating कि हो सकता है. The upper town might have been an administrative unit because वो upper town है और वो सबसे separate भी है सारे section से, तो हो सकता है वो administrative unit होगा. इसमें कोई बुरी बात लग नहीं रही है. There are two views of historians. Now there are 2 sections of the historians. One section believes that a single king might have controlled the entire administration with his ministers. ऐसा हम क्यों बोलते हैं? Remember Great Bath. Great Bath सिर्फ एक ही था मोहनजोदारो में. रिमेंबर ग्रेट ग्रैनरी, वो भी तो सिर्फ मोहनजोदारो में ही थी. सो हम ये बोलते हैं कि इतने सारे एक्सकवेशन हमें मिल चुके हैं और इतनी सारी चीज़ें इतनी प्रोमिनेंट हैं जो कि ये दिखाती हैं कि सबसे ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट सिटी मस्ट हैव बीन मोहनजोदारो ओनली. एंड दैट इज़ वाई देयर वुड हैव बीन जस्ट 1 king and the remaining 5 would have been his very important ministers. To further play with this mystery, to play with this set of historians, a bust called the Priest King has also been excavated from Mohenjo-daro. Then the next view of the historians are in the favor that oligarchical setup must have prevailed. Now, oligarchy is basically rule by few. You say rule by few. Few could have been the number 6 here. Group of 6 kings. Remember 6 capital cities. Remember here, when we talk about Great Bath, there were 6 bathrooms here. 6 ही क्यों थे? 7 हो सकते थे. ग्रेट बाथ मोहनजोदारो में है, लेकिन ग्रेट बाथ के जो साइड में जो bathrooms हैं, they are 6 in number. और ऐसी बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं which give us to conclude that there could have been a group of 6 kings. अब ये वाला जो set of historians ये इसीलिए ऐसा बोलते हैं कि हरप्पन्स had very little to do with battles. उन्हें कोई लेना देना ही नहीं था battle से. They were very self-sufficient. They were very calm in whatever they did. So that is why they had more to do with trade and business, which is why a set of kings must have prevailed. Now what do we conclude about a polity? That a centralized polity existed. Centralized थी because we see a uniformity in buildings. यहाँ तक कि जो ब्रिक से ये बिल्डिंग्स बन रही हैं उसमें भी यूनिफॉर्मिटी है. तो सेंट्रलाइजेशन होना तो ज़रूरी है, नहीं तो कैसे इतनी छोटी सी चीज़ जो एक बिल्डिंग को बना रही है, दैट इज़ ऑल्सो सिमिलर हर जगह. 4:2:1 का ही रेशियो चल रहा है ब्रिक्स में. That is why centralized polity must have existed with a very strong administration. हमें पता नहीं है administrative setup, but we know that a very strong administrative setup must have prevailed. Moving on to the fourth section, that is that of society. Now, you remember when we were talking about town planning, हमने देखा था कि there were 17 bedrooms, 22 bedrooms, 14 bedrooms, 15 bedrooms. Wherein we extrapolated that इतने सारे bedrooms में कुछ लोग तो accommodate होते होंगे ना. चलो हमने माना कि 14 bedrooms में 6 लोग ही accommodate होते होंगे, 7 लोग accommodate होते होंगे, 8 लोग accommodate होते होंगे. So, we can also extrapolate that joint family system might have prevailed. Now, there were also two very clear distinctions, that of upper town and lower town, which also makes us conclude that a division in the society could have also taken place, would have also prevailed. Social hierarchy could have also prevailed. In that कि जो लोअर टाउन में रह रहे हैं वो लोअर टाउन पीपल बुलाएंगे उन्हें, जो अपर टाउन में रह रहे हैं उन्हें अपर क्लास या अपर टाउन पीपल बुलाएंगे. Now, Varna, the concept of Varna, Jati, Gotra was not known to the Harappan people. The concept of slavery was also not known to them. But a point here to note is that education might have been there. We conclude so because हर चीज़ में यूनिफॉर्मिटी है, हर चीज़ इतनी स्ट्रिक्टली कैप्चर करी गई है वहाँ पे. They are focused on drainage system, they are focused on writing, they are focused on maintaining literary resources, they are focused on inscribing, they are focused on very minute things. They are focused on 90 degrees, geometry, they are focused on street planning. So that is why we conclude that education might have been there, but the syllabus is not known to us. हमें नहीं पता कि वो क्या पढ़ते थे, किस सिलेबस, क्या प्रिस्क्राइब्ड सिलेबस था जो वो पढ़ते थे, बट कुछ तो भी पढ़ते थे, कुछ पढ़ते तो थे. मैरिज एग्जिस्टेड, डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ मैरिजेस, बट किस टाइप का मैरिज होता था ज़्यादा, किस टाइप का कम होता था, दैट इज़ अननोन टू अस बिकॉज वी आर अनएबल टू डिसाइफर द स्क्रिप्ट. There are different types of marriages, monogamy, polygamy, polyandry, child marriage, widow remarriage, सब होता था. बट क्या ज़्यादा prominent था, क्या कम prominent था, that is not known to us. Prostitution was unknown to the people of Harappa. Occupation, when we talk about occupation, there were multiple occupations. Peasants थे, artisans थे, brick maker थे. We talked about bricks, which were in the ratio of 4:2:1. There has to be a group of people who are making bricks also, no? So brick making was also an occupation. We see different gold jewelries also. So we can also conclude that goldsmith was an occupation. We see very many examples of seals. Seal making was also an occupation. City builders, there must have been people who must have built the city also. Craftsmen, ornament makers, boat makers. How did you go from Lothal to Mesopotamia? In boats, in ships. So ship making was also an occupation. And position of women was good. And all the occupations were practiced. So what we can conclude? Here also, there are very many different groups. Some historians have concluded the Harappans were matriarchal. Why do we say so? Matriarchy is basically a thing wherein the mother is the head of the family. It's only because female skeletons have been excavated more than that of male skeletons. That is why some historians believe that Harappans were matriarchal in nature. But on and on, what we conclude is Harappa or the IVC was an egalitarian society. Equal opportunities for both male and female. Till now, we haven't recorded anything that this occupation was not allowed for women. That is why we conclude that Harappan civilization was an egalitarian society. Moving forward to the religion part, you have to understand why do people worship. People worship when they're in a state of fear. People worship when they want peace, when they want solace. People worship when they believe that a person, deity or anything is above them. Harappans were also people, right? So they also worship because of these very many reasons only. When we talk about different religions that were practiced in the Indus Valley Civilization, we begin with Sabians. Now, Harappans were Sabians. They worshipped the sun, moon, rain, mountains, trees, thunder. When I talk about trees, there's a seal that we'll see in which a Pashupati, or let's say we have a seal in which a man is sitting under a peepal tree. That's just one of the examples why we say that Harappans also practiced Sabianism. When we talk about the other forms of religion, we have to talk about animism. Harappans worshipped animals. Humped bull was considered very sacred. Deers, elephants, rhinoceros, unicorn, tiger, etc. When we talk about the humped bull, you'll also have to understand that humpless bull was also worshipped. It's not the case that only humped bull was worshipped. See, the examination or the examiner can trick us here. When we talk about the humped bull, we also have to take into consideration that Harappans did worship the humpless bull also. One major point here is that Harappans did not worship the cow. Now, the most important one here happens to be the one-horned unicorn, which is often identified as a rhinoceros. Here, this is the prominent thing that Harappans worshipped. Let's now move on to this very section, and I might as well need to show you all a picture. So look at this picture. We're talking about this picture now. And we're talking about the third point, Mother Goddess. So when the historians went to different houses, they noticed one thing that was common in all of the houses. What was it? All the houses have the excavation remains of a terracotta figurine. What do we call it? A figurine of a woman. It had the same feature. It was standing. It holds a smile. It is completely ornamented. You see these little things? These are ornaments. So this figurine was completely ornamented, and she wears a headdress, a crown. It's broken, obviously, but what we can make out is that this is a crown, a headdress. She's quasi-naked. She's not fully naked. She's not fully clothed. She's quasi-naked. From her womb, a protruding leaf branches kind of a thing can be seen. This figurine, is often regarded as Mother Goddess, a symbol of fertility cult. Now when we talk about this picture right here, mind it, we've excavated at Harappa. This has been excavated from Harappa, and this resembles a seal. So it's a man. In the previous section we were talking about this very seal. He's seated under a peepal tree with a yogi posture, you can see. And there are 2 to 3 horns. So some books mention that there are 2 horns. Some book also consider this to be a horn. So either 2 or 3 horns. Both of the answers are correct. Now this very person is surrounded by 4 animals: buffalo, tiger, elephant, rhinoceros. Elephant, this is elephant. This one happens to be a tiger. This is a buffalo. And this happens to be a rhinoceros. Near his feet were 2 deers. Here are 2 deers. So in totality, there are 6 animals in this seal. Mind it, this could be a question. In totality, in this seal, we've got 6 animals. And today, we regard him as Pashupati Mahadev. Pashupati Mahadev or Proto-Shiva. Which is why we conclude that Harappans practiced Shaivism. Harappans were Shaivites. Now, coming to the last 2 points, Phalu and Yoni worship. Phalu is basically a male sex organ. Yoni happens to be a female sex organ. Combination of Phalu and Yoni is called a linga, which is an idol. So linga symbolizes fertility cult. At Harappa and Lothal again, we've excavated a dockyard as well from there, which is in Gujarat. So at Harappa and Lothal, stone linga has been excavated. Many terracotta lingas have been excavated from all of the houses. And after this section, when we complete IVC, we'll be moving forward to the Rig Vedic section, wherein the Rig Veda also speaks of non-Aryans. You won't be able to understand this right now, but as soon as we move to the other part, the next section, you'll be able to understand that the non-Aryans were these people, the people of Meluha. So the Rig Veda also speaks about non-Aryans who were Phalu's worshippers. So we've got to understand one thing, that the Indus people gave the due diligence to fertility. They wanted fertile kids, and that is why they worshipped for it. Now, when we talk about fire altars, they have been excavated from Kalibangan. They're just like fire pits. The purpose is unknown to us. But one thing is for sure, that when we talk about fire altars, no human sacrifice has been reported so far, has been excavated so far. The fire altars, what we infer from these fire altars is they might have been used for ceremonial purposes. And no temples have been excavated so far from the sites of IVC. When we talk about amulets, majorly from all the sites, amulets have been excavated. What we extrapolate is that they might have been used to ward evil spirits. And Harappans believe that evil spirits and ghosts were able to harm them in all possibilities. But on and on, जब आप देखते हो कि इतने 2800 plus sites हैं और इन सारे sites में इतने सारे religions practice किए जा रहे हैं and everybody was living peacefully, what can we conclude? That the society was secular. अगर ऐसा नहीं होता तो फिर लड़ाई झगड़ा होता ना, एंड हमें कोई एक्सकवेशन मिले नहीं, ऐसे हमें कोई रिमेन्स मिले नहीं कि उन्होंने लड़ाई झगड़ा किया. दैट इज़ वाई वी कंक्लूड दैट द रिलीजन as far as IVC is concerned, it was very, very secular. Moving on to the next section, that is that of scripts. Now, script is something that you write, right? It talks about literacy. When you say कि कहीं का भी स्क्रिप्ट कैसा है, लेट्स से अभी हम IVC के बारे में बात करें, स्क्रिप्ट on and on has a direct correlation with the literacy as well. That is why we concluded that Harappans might have studied. We don't know the syllabus, but they might have studied because they've written something. As far as the script is concerned, 400 signs have been excavated so far. See, more than 400 actually. And this is just one section. So more than 400 signs have been excavated so far. These are signs. The signs that we have not been able to decipher. The script has not yet been deciphered, no. The script was written from right to left, similar to the Mesopotamian civilization. It was written from right to left. And the style that focuses, that majorly speaks that a script is written from right to left is basically called as Bostrophaden here. So anything that is written from right to left happens to be the Bostrophaden style of writing. Now when we talk about Bostrophaden, one thing is for sure that if you start from right, you have to end it at left. अगर आप सेकेंड लाइन में भी जा रहे हो तो फिर आपको ख़त्म यहाँ पे करनी पड़ेगी. सो ये हमेशा ऑड नंबर्स में ख़त्म हो रही है. इट विल एंड इन द लेफ्ट ओनली. ऐसे नहीं होगा, यहाँ पे नहीं ख़त्म होगी है, यहीं पे ख़त्म होगी. This script was both pictographic and geometric. We have got multiple pictographs and geometric signs that have been excavated. ये सिर्फ एक section था. These are all signs. These are all pictures. ऐसे बहुत सारी चीज़ें. And script is present everywhere. When we talk about the IVC, script is present everywhere. चाहे वो pottery pieces हों, चाहे वो उनके घर हों, they've inscribed everywhere. चाहे आप wells पे उनके जाके देखो, हर जगह उन्होंने कुछ ना कुछ लिखा हुआ है. So जब हर जगह कुछ ना कुछ लिखा हुआ है, तो what historians have concluded that literacy did prevail. जब इतने जगह सबको ही लिख रहे हैं तो सबको लिखना तो आता है ना, सबको बोलना भी आता होगा अगर कोई लिख रहे हैं तो. That is why we can conclude that literacy prevailed. These are all the different sections. And yes, that is it for this class. Thank you.